Good morning. Today on the PIO podcast, today's guest is Public Information Officer for the city of High Springs, Florida. High Springs may be a small city, but it stays busy. That means he wears many hats, moves quickly, and has to communicate clearly with the community that expects transparency and responsiveness. In this episode, we talk about what it is really like to be a PIO in a smaller agency where relationships matter, resources are limited, and every message carries weight. Our guest shares lessons from day-to-day operations, balancing communications with unexpected incidents, and building trust in a close-knit community where everyone knows your name. This conversation is for any PIO that works for a small agency, does not mean simple job. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
So thank you. I appreciate you being here. I kind of caught you through LinkedIn, and I was very pleased that, and looking at your background and the things that you're doing over in High Springs and stuff, man, great stuff. And I want to know one thing first, and I didn't ask you this in the initial when I sent the questions over, is what's your background? How'd you become the PIO?
Yeah, so I started with the agency in 2012 as a volunteer firefighter. My background professionally was in radio, and at the time I encouraged the chief to look at least establishing some form of external communication via social media or whatever. Really, before that, the department didn't didn't really have much of anything. So we established a Facebook page and just kind of started from that and just tried to, share information that we thought our community members and stakeholders would appreciate. And it wasn't always just about fires. I really tried to hone in on the radio background side and being an entertainer, if you will, and try to include jokes in our messaging or musical references or things like that. And really being a true community communicator. And if there was a lost dog, then we were going to use our megaphone to help reunite that lost dog with its owner or something like that. And we were successful in that many, many times. So it wasn't just we're at this fire, we're at this vehicle accident. It was really about just being a voice for the community in general.
Very good. All right, so tell our listeners, because many people are not going to know where High Springs is located at. Where is it at? What's its population?
A population that's a little over 7,000. It's a little teeny tiny little dot about 20 minutes northwest of Gainesville. So if you're looking at a map of the state of Florida and you see all the cities that are dotted, if you look up towards the north central part, you'll see Gainesville, and you just go northwest from there, and we are right there on the beautiful Santa Fe River.
Awesome. All right, so let's talk about population for the department, sworn and civilian staff. What is it?
So we have 14 full-time members, including the chief and myself. And then we have about 6 or 7 per diem members and 4 volunteers. So a little over
Excellent.
20 total.
Okay, very cool. All right, so you work in a small city, but it's a visible city. What does the PI role, what does that role look like day to day in High Springs, and how does it differ from, say, a bigger agency?
The PIO role takes on a lot more than just public information and outreach. In my particular situation, I also handle all the administrative functions of the department as well. So whether that's payroll or equipment acquisition, things like that. If for the fire and law enforcement folks that are watching and listening, anything that you can think that's done administratively, chances are I'm doing it.
Okay. So that keeps you busy on top of the role of communicating to the public.
Right. Yes.
You know what? I didn't even think I put this in the questions. What kind of platforms are you running right now, social media wise?
We're on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
Okay. All right. Very cool. What surprised you when you first got into the role as the PIO for the department?
I think the biggest surprise was how quickly people latched on and started following us. We kind of made a name for ourselves in 2017 when Hurricane Irma came through, of really staying on top of everything that was going on. It ended up being a huge flooding event for our area. There were rumors of major roadways closing like Interstate 75, which ultimately didn't happen. But there were rumors going around, and there was official communication that had gone out that indicated that the road would be closing. And it was our due diligence on staying on top of and networking some of the folks that we knew at FDOT and other agencies to make sure that we were helping amplify the messaging that no, those are indeed just rumors. And our following really took off from there. We had a couple of incidents where our agency went viral, all for good reasons. And at this point, I talked about our population being a little over 7,000. and we have nearly 20,000 followers on Facebook.
Wow. So you have double the population, almost triple the population that's following you. So you obviously have given very credible information and very timely information for people to be able to latch on and say, wow, we need to pay attention.
We try to. We certainly try to.
All right, so for a smaller community and I lived in a small town for a couple of years, and everyone knows everyone. How does that change the way you approach rumor control, transparency, and trust?
Actually, it is to our benefit because as you start to interface and develop relationships with the community members, whether they be business owners or folks at various churches and religious organizations, things like that, and community groups, you know that you can go to them and say, hey, look, I need your help in helping put out our messaging about sandbag operations or evacuations in the event of a hurricane, things like that. And we have had a handful of hurricanes over the last couple of years that have impacted our area. And it really goes back to those interpersonal relationships to make sure that that information gets out and making sure that you try to be approachable and a credible source. And there's a lot of people that have my cell phone number that in a larger agency probably would not. And they note if they call or text me, whether it's 1 in the afternoon or 1 in the morning, chances are I'm going to answer them.
Okay, so since you're so accessible, how do you balance that by protecting the organization during like sensitive situations?
There's a lot of folks that really understand, when is a good opportunity to reach out and when isn't. And thankfully, we're firefighters and everyone loves firefighters. Everyone loves the fire department. Our agency has been in our community since 1913, and people are extremely protective and passionate about us. And they really do a good job of helping correct some rumors that go around sometimes, whether it's during a natural disaster or whatever, and really setting the record straight and saying, hey, look, if you don't know, rather than pushing out this fake news, then, go to a verifiable source and make sure that you've got your facts straight.
Okay, I like that. All right, so let's talk about this. In your background, your experience since you've been doing this, what's an effective way to that you found to earn credibility with both the public and your internal staff?
Being honest and transparent. And if you make a mistake, then you got to own it and not try to cover it up. Allowing comments on social media it can be a challenge sometimes, but it's really important to show that social media is a two-way street. And our agency and our attorneys have been steadfast in making sure that, we leave these comments on and allow people to voice their opinions and their concerns or whatever the case may be. And if you do make a mistake, even if it's something simple like a grammatical error or something that you don't necessarily catch, and that has happened to me, it's happened to all of us. In addition to my role with the fire department, I'm also the PIO for the city itself. And, we had some messaging go out from a vendor about a transition to a different service. And there was a very obvious grammatical error in there that none of us caught. And I think it's just one of those things where your brain corrects it and you don't realize it until it goes out. We pushed it out. Somebody made a comment and I was like, yep. So I just owned it. It's like, hey, you know what? My bad.
Yeah.
I saw it and didn't notice. So thank you for correcting us. And it went over well. It just shows, look, that you're human. People are going to make mistakes. We're not robots. And it's important for people to realize that. It's important for folks to be able to humanize the government officials that they see.
Right, right. I do instruction for FEMA, and one of the things that we did recently is, well, he's told this story many times, but he is a PIO in a sheriff's office in North Carolina, and he put out a post on social media. He spelled something wrong, and he got attacked for it. Well, what he did is he went back on social media and he apologized for it and says sometimes we get things wrong, except he spelled every other word wrong deliberately. So what ended up happening is everybody's like, wow, they've got some skills. And
Yeah.
then the person that actually put the initial post out said, touche.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And that's the thing, man. Like, we're all going to make mistakes and you got to own it. And if you can spin it around and turn it into a joke, again, that goes back to humanizing everything. And it's not a robot that is on the other side of that screen. And we are actual people with, real lives and feelings and everything else. And, I think that's important that people realize that. And in a
Yeah,
small
yeah.
agency, people do. And, there will be situations where I'm at the grocery store, at a local restaurant or something like that. And, it's just, hey, how's it going? Good to see you, whatever. So it's important to develop those relationships.
Can you walk us through a moment when something didn't go as planned and what changed afterwards? If you don't have one, that's okay.
No, no, there is. I'm trying to think of. Okay, we had this was a couple of years ago. We kind of had a 1-2 punch with a hurricane coming through, and then we had a water line that was cut, and we had to water service to the entire city was out, I think, for 12 hours or something like that. And then we had a boil water for 48 or 72 hours after that for the required, bacteria testing and things like that. It was really kind of a 1-2 punch. And, our messaging got out quickly, but there was a little bit of a mishap with the texting platform, and some messaging was cut off. And we kind of had to do an about face and re-push that out again. And it was not the platform's fault. It was my own, and just trying to multitask. And I zigged when I should have zagged, and no, we corrected that. But those things happen.
Yeah, no, they absolutely do, especially when you're wearing multi hats. I mean, between the city and the fire department alone, but then handling administrative duties for a fire department, that's a lot of work. Just the administrative side of it is a lot of work. So the fact that you're juggling three things is a lot. What is one mistake you see agencies make during crises that creates more work for the PIO?
Making sure that your messaging is consistent. And there are occasions where even just amongst different agencies in the same municipality, whether it be a city or a county or a region of a state or something like that, where sometimes the messaging is a little bit different. And I think it shows that not everyone is playing off the same sheet of music. And that goes back to really establishing a good relationship amongst all your communicators, and making sure that all your stakeholders have the right information, and making sure your elected officials are properly educated on what exactly is going on, and what we're prepared to release publicly and what we're not, and then explaining why we're not ready to release that other information publicly.
Okay, so let me jump into this one. How do you manage messaging when elected officials have different communication styles or priorities?
Again, I think it's going back to developing those professional relationships with the elected officials. And, if they have their own communications department, depending on the size of the agency, again, in a small agency, in a small city, it's very easy to get a hold of our elected officials. And, we either do it directly through the city manager, which is what my protocol is, unless he says specifically, hey, I'm allowing you to reach out to the mayor directly or the vice mayor directly, or Commissioner so and so had a question. Can you please contact them and let them know? So we have the accessibility for the elected officials if we need to, especially during times of crisis. And they are really good about making sure that what they're pushing out is exactly what we are. And quite frankly, most of the time they're just sharing what we do, or copy and paste, or whatever the case may be. We have not had a situation in my agency, thankfully, where our elected officials have had some different communications than what the official messaging was.
Okay. How has local media changed in recent years for you guys, and how has that affected how you pitch or frame your stories?
We are a very small media market in all respects. And again, having come from radio, I understand that intimately. And I understand on the television side how you want to talk about wearing multiple hats is these multimedia journalists, as they're called now, are wearing multiple hats. And they're not just reporters. Multimedia journalist is an appropriate title for them, because especially in my market, they're coming out and they're setting up the camera by themselves, and they're framing out the shot. And they're doing the interviews and the pre and post reporting, going back, stitching it all together, doing the voiceover, maybe even doing the graphics, putting all the package together, shipping it off to the producer, and getting ready for the next newscast. So you want to talk about a hustler? These television folks in 2026 in many, many markets, they are overworked and underpaid, and anything that I can do to make their life easier, I am going to do it. If I can get B roll that is framed properly, easy for them to digest and chop up if they want to chop it up even more, and having an easy place for them to get it, I'm going to do it. One thing that I have contemplated doing, and I haven't done it yet, And this was something that I actually asked some of my colleagues at the Florida Fire Chiefs conference last week, the Florida Fire Conference, I should say, in our advanced PIO skills workshop is, have you interviewed yourself anticipating what a question might be from a reporter and shipping it off to them, so then they don't even really have to come to the scene if they don't want to or they're not able to. And especially in a small media market, they may not be able to because they're chasing 8 other stories. So if you have a fire, sure, they want to cover it, and they're going to use your written story and they're going to use your photos and or video, but can you interview yourself and answer some of those questions, and or even ask the questions out loud and then pause and answer them so they know how the questions are being set up. I haven't done that yet. My colleagues haven't either, but they thought it was an interesting idea to look at. So I am anxious to touch base with some of our media folks and say, hey, if we did this, is this going to be of value to you? Is it helpful, or is it going to be too awkward? And they're the subject matter experts in television news. So if they say no, it's going to look awkward, then I won't do it.
That is really an interesting idea. There have been many times, I've worked in large markets. I've worked in medium, and I wouldn't say small. I worked for a municipality, 500,000 people's.
Mm-hmm.
The market was in the 80s. It wasn't, so I
Right.
would not call it super small, but it's interesting. There have been times when they could not make it because they were running from 3 different stories, and I never thought about maybe I should, because what they're going, most of the time what they're going to ask.
Right. Right. So is it
All right,
of value to them and beneficial? Like, what those questions are going to be. Answer them.
that'll be interesting. I'll have to pose that question at my next class that I'm teaching, because I think we're going to have some reporters on that. So
Awesome.
I'll
Yeah.
have to see. That'll be interesting.
I
You know,
would
I'll have
love. I
to.
would know.
I'm gonna. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna ask my daughter. My daughter works for a media market up in Wisconsin. So I'll have to ask her and see what she says. That'll be
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
What type of positive stories resonate with your residents in High Springs, and how do you decide which ones you're gonna?
It's just like radio. Kids and pets. Kids and pets.
Yeah. Yep.
They love
Yeah.
they love those stories, and any community outreach that we do where children are involved. In fact, we just did one on Wednesday night with Girl Scouts, and I went and spoke to probably about 6 or 7 Girl Scouts for an hour and a half about fire prevention and safety and answering questions, and those questions were all over the place. I wouldn't have thought that a group of 9 and 10-year-old girls would have thought about some of these questions, and they did. And it was great. And, they shared a group picture afterwards on social media. Of course, then we shared that on Instagram. Everyone really seemed to resonate with that. And same thing with anything that's animal related. We have had a plethora of sinkhole rescues in the last 3 or 4 years involving animals, from goats to cows to dogs, multiple times, and to people. And every time it has been a successful save, thanks to our skilled firefighters, and every time people just love it. The image of getting that dog or that goat out of that sinkhole, it goes a million miles a minute.
Yeah, I had a story years ago when I was in my first department. Ducks. Mama duck is walking across the roadway with baby ducks. 3 baby ducks go down into a sewer, and they're stuck on a outcrop that's in the sewer. And she's chirping away, barking away, and officer comes by and sees it, and he calls the fire department over. The officer's in there with a shovel trying to pick them up one at a time to get them to get on the shovel. It's all on video. The whole thing, Mama's looking down. And it ended up just going to the locals. Well, the next thing I know, 2 days later, it's on national TV.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how quickly that can grow.
Absolutely. Yep.
Kevin, how do you use social media to inform without feeding misinformation or online conflict?
We make sure that whatever messaging we're putting out is 100% verified. Everyone is on board to get that information out. We set the record straight. And if someone tries to interject with some not so factual points, then again, we don't get into a bidding war in the comments back and forth. Again, we reiterate what our talking points are, leave it at that. If someone continues to go on and on, generally our followers are pretty good about straightening up and saying, no, you're not right. They said blank, and that's what the story is. There have been occasions where people are especially persistent, and rather than letting the comment lie, I will sometimes, again, offer up my phone number and say, reiterate the talking points, whatever the situation may be, and say, if you have any further questions, feel free to call me. Guess how many times I have been called?
Probably zero.
Once.
Once.
Once. And then they understood when I reiterated to them why.
Very good. What's worked best for reaching residents who are not active on social media, especially your older population?
Really getting the religious organizations involved. And this goes back to a very valuable lesson that I learned in my deployment to the Eastern Kentucky flooding in 2022. If you're familiar with Eastern Kentucky, it is an extremely rural and impoverished area, and a lot of folks do not have access to the internet for one reason or another, whether it's a lack of cell signal or the financial means or what have you. So what we found was extremely valuable in my area of responsibility was creating informational flyers and dropping them off at churches, stores, and doctors' offices, and leaving my phone number or the phone number of somebody else within our incident command system to be able to be reachable. And then obviously interfacing with the elected officials and whatnot. The county judge was always really good about getting in. Again, a very small area. Everyone knows everybody. And the county judge was really good about getting in with the local media, doing the interviews and interfacing with people. And for people who are not familiar with the government setup in Eastern Kentucky, or I guess in Kentucky in general, that I wasn't, the county judge is like your county manager that you may find in other parts of the country, or your county mayor, as we see in some parts of Florida. So they really are kind of the CEO of the county, was my understanding of the county judge. And again, having that relationship with them and making sure that they had all the correct talking points. So I try to do that here in High Springs too. And it was from those lessons learned that I reached out to a lot of our religious organizations and civic organizations in the community and said, would you like to be added to our emailer list when I put information out about? It's more generally about like hurricanes and things like that, and encouraging them to, if you want to know more, follow us on social media if you want to be part of my regular press releases. But when it really matters most and these hurricanes are bearing down on us or something like that, then that's when I'm getting that information out, and they are including it in their messaging during their Wednesday or Sunday services, or putting it in their bulletins, or emailing their parishioners and things like that. So it has really helped a lot.
That stakeholder engagement and working with your stakeholders, it's one of the best things that any PIO can do. So hearing that you've had a very positive experience both within your area and then outside of it, and then everybody forgets old school paper sometimes works best, especially when communication is limited electronically.
Yeah, the only thing and this was something I learned this is something that they do a lot in forestry, is setting out those trap lines when wildfires are always evolving, having a place where people are going to be. And that is, and I'm gonna paraphrase one of my mentors: beer, bait, and gas. Those people are gonna be going to one of those places, and sometimes you can get all that at the same place. And that's the place where you want to be, and getting that information out. So I tried to look at it as kind of like a trap line, only slightly more digital, knowing that obviously these folks that are, the administrators for their churches or their civic organizations or whatnot are interacting with me either via text or email. I know that I can get the information to them, and then they can share that information with their folks however they choose to do it. And they're going to know members of the community that I don't. And they know that little Miss Myrtle may not go out very much, but she's in a flood prone area, and we're going to make sure that she knows we're expecting a lot of rain. Maybe you should take precautions and, get out of there if you need to. And here are the resources that are available.
Awesome. Kevin, how do you measure whether your communication is working beyond likes and shares?
I think the most gratifying thing is, and this is a share in a roundabout way, but when you see on your community word of mouth pages on social media, what was that? What's going on? And people are screenshotting what you're putting out, whether that's an actual social media post, or if we send an email and a text alert, and they're reposting that and then telling people, well, if you had signed up for this, you would know. That's a really gratifying moment. Or just hearing people, and I've overheard it again, small town. I was at the grocery store before Hurricane Helene, and there were some people a couple of aisles over. There was someone asking about what resources were going to be available and are they going to have sandbags. Helene ended up being a wind event for us, not rain, but we still had sandbag operations. And they were asking about sandbags. And I kind of cued in on that because that had been our messaging. And I wanted to see if the cashier knew the answer. And if not, then I was going to be there to offer that information. And they said, no, I got an email about that, and they're going to be starting sandbags later on today, and then for the next couple of days. That was a huge win in my mind. And again, going back to the trap line and creating these infographics, which Canva is amazing for someone who is illiterate in graphic design. Canva really helps you make it look like you know what you're doing. And I promise you I don't, but making these infographics and again, going back to these interpersonal relationships, being able to walk into our local grocery store at Winn-Dixie and go and find the manager or the assistant manager whom are,
Mhm.
they're both incredibly lovely and whom I adore. I can walk in and say, hey, I want to make sure that people know about the sandbag operations, for example. I have printed off 15 copies. If you need more, let me know. Would you mind putting them up at the register so people know? Absolutely. Don't worry about extra copies. If we need them, we'll make them. And she said, we have a little display case. I'm going to cut this down a little bit more. It's going to fit in perfectly. Sure enough, an hour later, they were at all the registers.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great cooperation.
Mhm.
Excellent. What skills do you think a new PIO underestimates but quickly realizes they need?
Well, in addition to being an effective communicator, you're going to be expected to wear a lot of hats when it comes to, like we talked about just a moment ago, graphic design, video editing, and things like that. I think the younger generation coming up, I'm 39 and it feels odd to say the younger generation, but I guess they are. They kind of have more of a knack for that video editing than I do. And certainly, those before me did. And thanks in due in large part to a lot of these apps that can help you put it together using AI or just, whatever features are built in. So really finding a platform that you're comfortable with and kind of honing your skills in from there or networking with people who can help you. And, it's like being a leader or a manager. You hire to your weakness. So if there's someone within your professional or even social circle that is really good and is willing to help you,
Yeah,
then work
absolutely.
collaboratively together to execute that. I have a fantastic relationship with my colleague, the next agency over. He is an amazing videographer and editor, and we have worked together in multiple projects to make sure that we are putting out some really, really good creative. And I'm really thankful for that relationship.
Awesome. Kevin, what's one thing about how public agencies approach communications that you would change?
I think again, understanding that not everybody is on social media and trying to find that other avenue to make sure that your messaging is getting out there. And whether that is through other realms of the digital world and something that I have considered but never actually put in motion is it of value to communicate your messaging on a place like Reddit? There's a lot of people that are not on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or YouTube, but they are on Reddit. Is it of value to go on Reddit or WhatsApp or something like that? Or again, going back to the old school way of more than just a generic press release via email, making
Mhm.
those relationships and making sure that they help amplify your messaging.
Absolutely. No, I'm a fan of Reddit because I've used it on a couple different occasions, but I've also used even the apartment finder
Mm,
website and the comment section. It's an interesting way to it's funny how sometimes you can get some really good information from people about what's going on in a parking an apartment complex
yeah,
just by the comments that come across. But
interesting.
Reddit, I think, is a really interesting tool sometimes if you can find the right page to be on, or if you can connect with them and get them to come to you.
Yeah, I haven't gone down that rabbit hole yet. I've contemplated it and have talked to some of my colleagues about it, but I'm not aware of many agencies doing that. I'm sure there are somewhere.
There's a few probably, yeah.
Yeah, and I would love if there's an agency out there that is using Reddit to please help educate the rest of us, and if they can come on your podcast and let us know the weaknesses and the triumphs that you've had on Reddit, to let the rest of us know.
Well, there you have it, everybody. If you are a Reddit person and you're using it for your agency, contact me. I'd like to get you on the
Help,
show.
right?
There you go. Kevin, what advice would you give to a PIO stepping into a city role for the first time?
Do your job, stay out of the drama, and make sure that you are equitable to everybody and accessible to everybody.
Good answer. I like that. Very diplomatic. Kevin, what keeps you motivated in public communications, especially in difficult or tough times?
It can be challenging sometimes. We talked about social media and the people who like to come on and antagonize you, and that can be draining. So I think knowing when to kind of shut off and disconnect a little bit, but then, trying to find that inspiration and feeling validated again that what you're doing is making a difference. And sometimes that can be difficult and could be a challenge. But undoubtedly, you get your validation some way or somehow. I'll follow other agencies, usually much larger agencies on Instagram for some inspiration sometimes to kind of get me out of a funk or give me an idea or something like that. But, we're all in this together. And I think it's really important that wherever you are, if you can get your group of PIOs together and you meet up monthly, quarterly, whatever it is, and outside of working hours, I mean, if you want to do a working lunch, great. But if you can meet on some evening or a weekend or something like that, where you're out of your uniform and you're, meeting up for a beer, whatever the case may be, it's a much more relaxed atmosphere where you're not just talking shop, but you're able to develop those relationships and get to know those people and know that when the stuff hits the fan, that you know that you can reach out to them. And I'm extremely fortunate to have that network in my county, and that has been a priority for a lot of the agencies to make sure that we get together both professionally and kind of off the clock too. And there's a couple people that are really taking that torch and running with it, and I'm thankful for that.
That's really good to have is that resource, that backup in a sense.
hmm
Kevin, is there a lesson from High Springs that you think applies to every community, no matter the size?
Again, being approachable and making sure that the information that you're putting out is completely vetted and is accurate, and that everyone is on the same page. And sometimes that can come back and bite you if you get some information that wasn't completely accurate, or if you misspeak for one reason or another, then you got to own it.
Is there a question I should have asked? And if so, how would you have answered it?
I don't think so. You've kind of run the gamut on the questions.
I try and get some good ones in there. All right, let's go to some rapid fire. We'll have a little fun with these. Phone call, voicemail, FaceTime. What's your go to?
Phone call.
Streaming binge or weekend read? What's ideal?
Neither.
Favorite adult beverage?
Cider.
What's your I've earned this indulgence after a tough week?
Pizza. I don't need an excuse
If
to
you
eat
could,
it though.
no, 31. I've done it in 31 days in a month. So yeah. What if you, if you could adopt an animal, real or mythical, what would it be?
I love dogs. I might as well just add to the collection of dogs.
There you go. What's one song that always gets you moving no matter the mood?
Mm. Rage Against the Machine's got a lot of really good records.
Yeah, they do. Play it safe or roll the dice. What's your instinct in a crisis?
I'm usually kind of a play it safe kind of guy.
What's your comfort zone activity, that thing that resets your brain?
Walking in the woods with my dog. And anyone who knows me that I do that a lot.
It's a good way to disconnect too.
hmm
Absolutely. What historical figure would you want to shadow for a day, not just meet?
Winston Churchill.
People have said that. What is one thing that helps you decompress after a tough day?
Walking in the woods with my dog. You see a theme here?
Yep, I'm getting it. What communication decision still sits with you today?
There's no such thing as a dead mic. And realizing when you're talking to a newspaper reporter that everything you say may be written down and to not say stupid things. And a very, very young PIO realized that, especially
Yeah,
when it
I
was printed in the
understand that one.
newspaper the next day.
Who do you call or text when you need a gut check?
Um, I don't know if I want to call them out by name, but my mentor from the Florida Forest Service, now they're going to know.
Good,
Um,
good enough.
it- that's
Good
it's
enough.
that's my resource. It's a call or a text. And hey, I'm not going to lie, I have no idea what the hell I'm doing, but I know you will. So can you help me out here? They are a fantastic resource, and I'm so blessed to have access to them.
All right. So, what keeps you in this profession when things get difficult?
Glutton for punishment? No, I still love it. And honestly, I never thought that I would actually be in this role. When I was 9 years old, I wanted to be in radio, and I was in radio. And then 7 years ago, as I was with the agency as a volunteer firefighter and PIO, I realized that I wanted to be a PIO full time. And I think I just go back to that. Like, how were you feeling when you knew that it was time for a shift in your career? Try to recenter myself and realize that we are making a difference, and it is important that people, get the right information at the right time. But that can be discouraging sometimes.
Right. No, completely understandable. Kevin, final thoughts. What key points would you like our listeners and viewers to take from today's interview?
Network amongst your community and network amongst your colleagues in whatever your profession may be. If you're not a PIO, but you're watching this podcast out of curiosity to figure out what the hell it is that a PIO is or what PIO even stands for. That's the big question I get. What is it? What is a
Yep.
PO? Well, we love our acronyms, but again, it's networking and establishing those relationships and always looking for an opportunity to learn in what you're passionate about.
Yep. Absolutely. Last thing you want to do is share a business card when it's the rainy day. You want to do it during the sunshine days. Absolutely. As we wrap this up, is there a piece of wisdom or a motto you live by?
In 6 months, will any of this matter?
That's a good one. I like that. Kevin, how can people best reach you if they want to connect or follow up?
Yeah. Professionally, you can follow me on LinkedIn. Just look for Kevin Mangan and would love to connect. Drop me a message, follow, whatever. There's lots of PIOs out there. I had the opportunity to network last week with a bunch from all over the great state of Florida. So hoping that I can do that with other colleagues elsewhere. I'm a New England boy, born and bred, and moved to warmer climates 20 years ago. So if there are fellow New England PIOs out there that want to connect and you want to do so before tomorrow or before Sunday so we can talk about the Patriots game, I would love that because I haven't found a lot of Patriots fans in Alachua County, Florida. I'm sure they're out there. Sure, they're out there somewhere, but would love to connect and find some other Patriots fans.
There you go. Kevin, thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Robert. Really appreciate it.